I'm Bob Short, and this is another in our series of oral histories here at the University of Georgia, sponsored by the Richard B. Russell Library and Young Harris College. Today we will take a long look at Georgia's tourism industry with Bill Hardman, who is known simply as Mr. Tourism. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you.
Colbert, Georgia.
10 miles from Athens. When I grew up in Colbert, Georgia, my dad died in 1929 and left my mother with 6 kids. He lost his business, his home, and everything. So we were taught to work at early days in life. She took in boarders to try to make a living, and so we just were raised to work. And by the time I was 9 years old, I had a paper route, the Atlanta Constitution, and had it until I was 14 years old. And that's the way I helped make a living during those rough times in the 30s. Some great things came out of it. When I was 13 years old, I won a trip to the New York World's Fair by selling more subscriptions in a sized town like Colbert compared to other cities in Georgia. And I never remember, I saw Buster Crabbe and Eleanor Holmes and TV for the first time. I saw myself on TV when I was 13 years old. But I think the highlights, we didn't have a Southern baseball team. We all had different teams that we were pulling for, and I was the Detroit Tigers. And my cousin Phil Hardman was the St. Louis. And I had that newspaper out, and every morning we'd get there and find out who won what games. Well, I really think a great honor. I got to go to the Yankee Stadium while I was in New York. Another young boy, 13, I guess our chaperone said, you get on the subway straight up to Yankee Stadium. We did, and I got to see Schoolboy Rowe and Tommy Bridges pitch that day and won a doubleheader for the Yankees. And I got to see Lou Gehrig and some of the old-time Hank Greenberg with Detroit and people like that.
Did that whittle your appetite for tourism?
I didn't even know how to spell tourism back then.
When did you first get interested in tourism?
Well, I was very active in the Georgia JCs, and Abbott Massey was interested in Georgia. He was president of the Georgia JCs. And so we organized a chapter in Warner Robins, where I was living at that time. And we were selected the outstanding new club in Georgia. And Abbott ended up a couple of years later being president of the Georgia JCs. And I got to know Abbott. We used to go to the national conventions together. We were running for president one time. We came up with a slogan, "Get in the habit with Abbott." And we had little rabbit outfits jumping around and get in the habit with Abbott. But Abbott Massey is the reason I'm sitting in this chair today. He called me, and I was in Warner Robins, said he was in Valdosta. He said, meet me at the New Perry Hotel, and said, I need to talk to you about something. So I went over and met with him at the New Perry Hotel, and he said, Governor Vanderbilt wants to have a tourist division in states. Several other states had, not a lot back then. This was in 1959. So I met him in Perry, and he said, I want you to come to Atlanta, stay with me 6 to 8 weeks, and just help me get this tourist division set up. And I walked in the Capitol, and boy, I thought I was something. I walked in the Capitol. It was the basement floor where the old Department of Commerce was. And so I went to stay 6 or 8 weeks or whatever, and I stayed 12 years. It was the most exciting thing I've ever thought about doing in my life.
And that's when you met Governor Vanderbilt.
Yes. And he was wanting to create a tourist division. And one of the first things we asked the governor, we want welcome centers. Well, we wanted welcome stations. Florida had welcome stations in Pennsylvania. And so he said, I'm all for it. Well, this is when we first started working on creating welcome centers, we named them, in Georgia.
Well, we're going to get to that, Bill, but first of all, I'd like to know how other state officials, particularly those who held the state's purse strings, perceived the tourist industry at that time? Was it a priority at all?
No, there was nothing. Georgia never having a tourist division. We had to work our way up the ladder over the first few years, and then the legislature every year increased our budget. And in 1970, we had one of the largest advertising and promotion budgets in the nation, and it was because of our legislature and working together that created the excitement we had in far as promoting Georgia.
But at the time of our inauguration of a tourist division, how was Georgia perceived around the country?
Awful. We were known for speed traps and clip joints and poor roads, and it was just awful. And this is, we knew it in the beginning, that was some of the things we needed to work on at first. Mm-hmm. And what we did with Mr. Jim Gillis, our state highway commissioner, one of the greatest guys to work with as far as tourism in Georgia, we went to him, and we had Dr. Bill Keeling at the University of Georgia. We did a study to find out what tourists thought about Georgia and what they thought about our roads. And the study lasted a year. We did the 4 seasons on every major highway in Georgia. And we came back to the legislature with that study and Governor Vanderbilt, and we got a bond program to widen and repave some of the major highways in Georgia, particularly where the tourism would go.
Well, Bill, what is the first thing you did to try to overcome that bad reputation?
Well, we knew we had to do something. We started going to the conventions, like the JC Convention and the Kiwanis Convention, taking Georgia peaches that the Peach Council gave us. And we'd go to these conventions and be in the parades passing out Georgia peaches. Union Camp at Savannah printed us a little bag, said the world's finest peaches come from Georgia. And this is the beginning, you might say. And then we started working with Lockheed and Georgia Power and other Georgia industries, you might say, that gave us the seed money to start some promotion for Georgia. And then as we started developing the welcome centers and for instance, we had, I met President Kennedy in Warm Springs, and Ed Bridges was Governor Vanderbilt's press secretary, and he once said, Bill, go talk to the president, talk to the Senator Kennedy, and said, tell him how to pronounce a congressman's name from Georgia. And that was a great honor for me to get to know him. And not to know him, but just to beat him. And so in the beginning, we had a float for the President's Parade for Kennedy's from Georgia. Mm-hmm. And Ed Bridges and we went out to the governor's conference. The weather was so bad in Washington. It took us 5 hours to get back from the hotels in Northwest Washington back to our hotel downtown. But we had the Miss Georgia and other beauty queens from Georgia. We always took Miss Georgia because we could get some kind of attention from the press with her. And I'll never forget the day of that parade, we had Hargrove Displays out of Maryland to build our float, first float we ever had on Georgia. And the weather was so cold, and we didn't have our little ladies dressed appropriately. They were in a kind of antebellum outfit, so we knew they were freezing. And one of the Jeeps came by loaded down with blankets. So I told those girls, I said, y'all just look somewhere else. And I wrapped every one of those girls' legs so they wouldn't freeze. Got them seated back so they were wrapped up good. Mm. And but that was our first inaugural for Georgia, and that Georgia ever had at that time, mm-hmm. for any president.
So what we're learning is that before your arrival, Georgia had not been marketed
Never.
as a tourist destination.
Well, I take that back. They had a little budget, and I never will forget, they had an ad in Coronet magazine. That was the only thing that we discovered at that time, anything the state was doing.
Well, if you will, Bill, would you tell us or give us a shotgun view of your goals the moment you arrived as our new tourist commissioner?
Well, I think that Georgia has such a horrible reputation. Anything that we could do to improve Georgia's reputation is what it was all about at that time. We didn't have the tools that we had later on 3 or 4 years later. But I think that was one of the biggest things we tried to change.
Who were you marketing to at that time? What was the type of tourist you wanted to bring to Georgia?
Well, the number one market was everybody was going to Florida. So this is the reason we wanted to build the welcome centers, just to stop them in Georgia. If we could just get them stopped today, it would mean millions of dollars for Georgia. And but we over the next 2 or 3 years, we started building the welcome centers. We did our first one in Sylvania, the next one in Savannah. We didn't have any money even then. We had to get it from the governor's emergency funds. And the first one in Sylvania cost us $56,000 to build. But we got the land donated to use. And then the second one we built was in Savannah, and we worked with the Savannah Kiwanis Club to help raise the funds for that first welcome center built in Savannah at the foot of the Eugene Talmadge Memorial Bridge.
You must have realized that you would need help without a big budget. To whom did you turn for assistance when you first began your tourist marketing program?
Well, we worked with the Georgia Press Association and the Georgia Association of Broadcasters. Carolyn Carter, who was one of the greatest ladies, she, as far as tourism for Georgia, and writing great articles about attractions, events, and things like that. We hired her. She was one of the first people we hired. And each week, we'd get out a story on a city or attraction in Georgia and send it to all of the Georgia Press members. And then we started working with the Georgia Association of Broadcasters. And we started a program, and we named the slogan for Georgia was "See Georgia First," because again, everybody's going to Florida. And so the Georgia Association of Broadcasters, we started a program with them where each city, the radio station would have a contest to select a local Miss See Georgia First. And then we would take her on all of our promotions, where we had the travel shows and things like that throughout the Northeast and Midwest. Mm-hmm. So that was the way we got the Georgians. And then the legislature started giving us funds. Each year we had more funds for promotion and advertising than we'd had the previous year. And it just kept going. And we had, as I mentioned, we had great people in the legislature, like Ford Spanks from Tifton, who was chairman of the Senate Tourism Committee, and Arch Geary. I remember Arch Geary from Atlanta was working with the House Tourism Committee. And things started gelling, and we could see a change. We started getting money to promote tourism in Georgia. We started advertising in magazines like Holiday back then. It's not, I don't know if it exists today. Better Homes and Gardens. Southern Living gave us more great publicity on Georgia, and the editor was just a great friend of ours. And so then we started going to the shows, travel shows. And again, it was the Georgia industry. We had a 10-foot exhibit when we first went to several of the shows. And then we wanted to outdo the other states. And then we got Rock City, Callaway Gardens, Savannah. We had, I think it was 6 booths that we had. And when you come by the Georgia booths, and you see the other states have one 10-foot booth. We just shine like a gold in the river. And then Fran Tarkenton, he has just been. He started playing with the Minnesota Vikings, and we hired Fran to come work with us in tourist division. And Bill Curry went to work with the industry division in our Department of Commerce. So we take Fran on shows with us, the travel shows, and then we sent him every show we could in the off seasons when the travel shows. We started bringing personalities of Georgia in to help us sell, and then it just started building up and up.
How long did it take us to slow down those tourists, keep them in Georgia for a while before they went to Florida?
Well, it took a number of years. We started building the welcome centers. I didn't tell you the others we built. We built the first three was built in Savannah, the first one, Savannah, and Interstate 85 at Livonia. Mm-hmm. And then as the highways were built, we added one at Ringgold, Columbus, and we worked with the local people in Columbus to help build that one. In fact, it was already built. It was part of a golf course clubhouse that we used. And then we built one at Valdosta on 75. And we had one at the Atlanta airport, which I thought was great, but somehow it got closed over the next few years. And it just took the publicity we got, bringing travel writers in. We had sometimes as many as 3 travel writer groups a year from people like papers like the New York Times, particularly Chicago or Cincinnati, the travel editors, and they started giving Georgia some good write-ups. That started changing things, and that was again some of the free publicity we got.
How are you abetted by other organizations who were interested in promoting tourism?
100% cooperation. Everybody was tried to help us in every way, as far as the cities, attractions. We'd have people like the guy from the Okefenokee Swamp would go with us on our travel shows. Charles Phelan was head of a little White House at Warm Springs. Callaway Gardens. They all pitched in together to go with us on the shows. And at the shows, we'd have luncheons for the travel writers and the tour operators and the travel agents. And we'd always bring food up from Georgia for the menu. And this is it just started just gelling again, I guess is the best word I can use.
Well, let's go back a minute for the tourist welcome centers. Tell us how those operated.
Well, it was operated by our division, and when we would hire, when we did the interviews, we tried to select the managers, particular, and all of them, with sales ability. And but what we did, we trained them. We taught them Georgia history. We took them on tours of Georgia so that they could visit our points of interest. We had a nice-looking uniform for them to wear. We taught them how to respect and treat a tourist when they walked in that center. I tell you 2 things that happened to us. Ovid Davis was Senior Vice President of Coca-Cola, and Ovid gave us millions and millions of Cokes to give to the tourists as they came in our welcome centers. Georgia Peanut Council gave us millions and millions of little packages of Georgia peanuts to give away, and we did that for I don't know how many centers do that today, but in Columbus, since Royal Crown Cola was there, we gave away Royal Crown Cola.
Mm-hmm. So they've been a big success.
Yes, and just to go see one of the welcome centers today, several of them have been remodeled and enlarged, but you ought to see the Georgia brochures that's in there today. promoting Georgia. I mean, every city, every attraction, it's just amazing what's happened over the years.
Let's go back for a minute to See Georgia First. Tell us about that program. How did it originate?
Well,
Whose idea was that?
Well, it was our idea. I don't remember just who came up with the idea, but it was a perfect slogan for us to use because so many people, when we created that slogan, was going to Florida. So our billboards and things like that had on See Georgia First. And that's what we did in all of our advertising and in the papers up north. And we were the first state to ever use NBC radio. We were the first state to use tourism marketing on NBC radio.
Very apropos of your effort, I thought, was your program entitled Stay and See Georgia.
That was a great program of the State Chamber of Commerce. There's a little lady named Moselle Christian, and she was a fireball. And what she did, she went out and got all the cities organized, clean up and beautification, creating events, trying to develop new attractions. And we had an understanding that we would do the welcome centers and all the advertising and marketing, and she would do the Stay and See Georgia program. An outstanding job she did. And working with the state chamber, they were great to work with.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's turn now to some of your other early activities. One comes to mind is our participation in the presidential inaugurations. You were in charge of that.
I mentioned to you how I met the Senator Kennedy, and that was our first inauguration. And then our second one was for Senator Johnson, President Johnson. What happened, his wife Lady Bird had a train that she had stops through the South. So we created the float at a little train that I think is about 3 or 4 coaches, and we had many of the ladies on that train, or young ladies, were daughters of members of Congress. And an interesting story about that, Carolyn Carter was living in Washington, she and Dawn at that time. And so we had them out as a group to teach them how to wave and do things like that. And so we got back to the Carolyn's apartment, which is North Washington. The elevator broke down. And here I was trapped on that elevator with 13 ladies. And it took about an hour and a half before the fire department got there to rescue us. But I could say that they were well behaved. They didn't get too upset because they knew help was coming.
You were in what, 3 or 4 presidential inaugurations?
Well, we did.
Georgia?
When I was with the tourist division, we did the Kennedy, the Johnson, and the Nixon inauguration. Mm-hmm. And when Nixon was inaugurated, Governor Maddox was governor. And what happened with being a Democrat and a Republican coming in, Senator Coverdale and I went to the governor to get the funds to build the float for the Nixon inauguration. And I never forget, we got tickets to go to the Mayflower ball, so we went to one of the balls that time. But I've got pictures of that. That's of that float, and it was a beautiful float. In fact, 2 of the Miss Georgias on that float. I'm gonna be with one of them next weekend in Orlando, who moved to Orlando, and another one from Marietta, Georgia. And they were great sales ladies for Georgia. I mean, they were just fantastic. But with let me go back to when Johnson was inaugurated. We stayed in a hotel in northwest Atlanta there, and we didn't have tickets. Dorothy and my wife and I didn't have tickets for the ball. And the fellow who did the float for us said he got us 2 tickets. And we, of course, being on a state salary of almost nothing back then, we went over to this little store about 2 blocks from the hotel. We walked in there and we told them the predicament. And the lady dressed Dorothy up even in a fur coat. And we took it back the next morning and we said, "How much do we owe you?" And she said, "Nothing." And that's just a memory we have for life, of being able to go to that ball and not having clothes. And then finally the decorator got me a tuxedo to wear. So those are great memories.
You recalled your cooperation from our governors. Tell us about your first governor's conference on tourism.
Well, when Governor Vandervoort, no state was having a governor's conference on tourism. So we went to him and said, we need to have a governor's conference. It has the meaning to get all of our Georgians here, start teaching them about, tourism projects and so forth. And so we had our first governor's conference on tourism at the Heart of Atlanta Motel, and Morton Rollison was the manager there. Mm-hmm. And now just about every state in the nation has an annual governor's conference on tourism, and Georgia was number one as far as that project.
Who attended those conferences?
All the people in the attractions, hoteliers, chambers of commerce, CVBs, convention visitors bureaus. It was, and then we would bring in speakers, knowledgeable speakers, to talk about different promotion projects you could get involved in, so that it was a beginning of us getting all the Georgians working together in tourism.
You mentioned holding travel shows around the country. How did you select the sites?
According to the highways coming in Georgia, I guess, like 301 or 41. And we found out, and like in 41, we picked up people from Cincinnati and Cleveland and Chicago and Milwaukee. And those were some of the shows that we had more attendance than Philadelphia or places like that.
You remember any stories about those travel shows?
Yeah, many of them, but it would take us too long to talk about them.
Well, how about New York?
Well, let me tell you about New York. The first meeting Abbott and I attended for meeting with tourism people was in Dahlonega, Georgia at the Smith House. And there's no one in North Georgia except 4 or 5 people that really promoted tourism to North Georgia. One of them was Madeline Anthony from Dahlonega, Bill Fry, who owned the Smith House, Barnell Aiken from Blairsville, he had a little motel, and Emily Graves, who was the mayor of Clarksville. And they were the ones that came to this first meeting when Abbott and I went up to Dahlonega. And we became friends with Madeline Anthony at that time, and you need to, I wish she was still alive so you could get on this program. She's the one that brought the gold to the Capitol Dome twice, to put the gold on the Capitol Dome. And she was a lady that just, I think she dreamed tourism from the minute she went to bed to the minute she got up the next morning. Just a great lady to work for as tourism for North Georgia and Dahlonega.
Bringing travel writers into Georgia to see our attractions, what did you show them?
Well, the main points of interest, we would best I can remember, we'd maybe go to Callaway, have a tour around Atlanta, Cyclorama, which was a big attraction back then, and we had a little plane, a little DC-8 that we'd fly these travel writers around, and then we'd go to the Okefenokee Park, and then over to Jekyll Island, and then we'd drive them up to Savannah, and then we'd always take them to the Masters on the first day of the Masters, and that was a highlight of their trip, I'll tell you. And but they started writing articles. I've got a scrapbook that thick of articles that these people wrote about the good things in Georgia over those years. And I'm sure since then there's probably, you talk about creating this museum, I bet you the book is that thick now.
Talking about popular tourist attractions, what would you consider our bigger attractions in the state as far as tourism is concerned?
Well, the Atlanta market, of course, Stone Mountain, Six Flags, and then all your downtown attractions now. The aquarium, the World Coca-Cola. It's so many things going on now today as far as tourism attractions compared to what we had back in the beginning. And let me say this too. In the 60s, there was not a new hotel built in downtown Atlanta until the American was built in 30 years. And then you had the Hyatt Regency. And then hotels started popping up everywhere. So it's really a reward to see how the travel industries work together to create this atmosphere of a good name for Georgia so that we could develop those attractions. I know we'll get Six Flags. The guy who owned Six Flags over Texas we worked with, and a guy named Michael Jenkins, who's still a friend today that I'm working with on some projects. And they selected the name Dahlonega. That was the first ride at Six Flags. And I know Michael Jenkins had a lot to do with it because I took him to Dahlonega and he thought the gold deal was just fantastic. And then the first time we rode the Dahlonega ride, it was Governor Maddox and the head of the Six Flags over Texas who built Six Flags over Georgia and myself. And that was some kind of experience to be able to ride on that attraction. And the first one built at Six Flags. Now they've got a number of rides.
Mm-hmm. While we're on the subject of the Atlanta tourist attractions, let's talk about the World Congress Center. Now, we know that you were very instrumental in bringing the World Congress Center to Atlanta. Please tell us about it.
Well, it was after I left the state. And, of course, I knew a lot of the legislatures. I guess that's the reason they asked me to help. But we had to lobby for the World Congress Center for about 3 years before we got the money. And this first money we got, I think it was $30 million to build the A, B, and C halls. And now you see how they expanded over the years, and now they have the stadium. So, but we knew that what that would do for us, conventions and events, and how many people that would bring to Atlanta. And that's really the reason the hotels started springing up, is because of the World Congress Center. But we lobbied the legislature for those years, and I never forget, I'd go around the state, and I went to Columbus, and they had a lot of talk about the World Congress Center. And I never forget the next day in the Columbus papers said, "Questions still unanswered." And that's been on my mind ever since then. But really what created an atmosphere with other legislatures, we created one floor for Georgia exhibits so that each state or each region could have an exhibit in the World Congress Center. And that Tommy Irvin helped us on that, who was our Commissioner of Agriculture. And that kind of turned the tide of getting the legislature involved to give us those funds.
Bill, how's the best way to reach potential tourists today? Through print ads, television, the internet? Has the internet
I won't tell you,
changed?
I am so dumb about the internet that I don't even want to answer. I'm just, but back then, everybody's going to the internet today. As part of it, you still can't replace some of the things like brochures, the welcome centers that give those brochures away. There's many forms of advertising. Still the magazines like Southern Living and others, and the travel articles. I mean, people read the newspapers. And that's still, I think, one of the best forms of getting a message out is through all the travel articles you can put in your papers throughout America. But the internet is growing by the minute. And so many people depend on the internet to make reservations for trips. And let me tell you something too. The fact that I had a travel agency when I left the state. Billy Stuckey and I went together and formed a company called Hardman and Stuckey Travel Investments. And we had built a little tourist attraction in Dahlonega. We had a travel agency that sold travel anywhere anybody wanted to go. We hired some professional people to come and help us operate it. But today, you don't have very few travel agencies left because the internet is just about put them all out of business because they can get everything they need off the websites.
Mm-hmm. Bill, there's a current debate over whether or not the state should help pay for the construction of a new stadium in Atlanta for football.
Thank goodness I'm not involved now. I don't, I have mixed emotions about that. And I think, too, that the stadium has done Georgia and Atlanta so much. They're just the greatness for what they've done to make Atlanta a greatest city for sports activities. And I'm really hoping, I don't know how it's going to be financed, but I'm for building a new stadium 100% because you watch, and I'm so proud it's domed. You watch these football games out in the cold, and it's just it's a blessing that this first dome stadium has been so successful. And I can really, I'm 100% for it, but I don't know how it's going to be financed.
So you don't know whether or not it's a good use of the hotel-motel tax?
Well, I tell you, when we started the hotel-motel tax, Ray Hill, who was president of the Georgia Hotel Association, and we of the tourist division, went to the legislature to get funds from the hotel and motel tax to give to convention and visitors bureaus and to the chambers of commerce to promote tourism, 100%. That's what it started off back in I think it's 66 or 67. And now they're getting every piece of dollar, every dollar they can for different things for government. And it's just changed completely what the intent of that bill was. The intent of that bill was for cities like the chambers and CVBs to promote their cities for tourism, and that's been whittled away. They use it for many things and for other things other than promoting tourism.
Mm-hmm. There's no denying the fact that sports have had a tremendous impact on Atlanta's economy.
True. Very true. In fact, we were so excited when the Braves came to town. We worked with them very closely as far as having the welcome groups at the stadium working, having people from the sports world. We helped entertain them. And what the Braves have done for Atlanta is it's amazing. Any sport team that we've had has done great things for Atlanta.
You are one of the founders of the Southeast Tourism Society. Would you please tell us about that organization and what it's done and your role in it?
Well, in 1966, we belonged to a national organization, and that we did see the state travel directors from the South, from everywhere. And at those meetings, we'd get together and talk about how we need something, an organization to promote the South. So in 1966, we created an organization called the Southern Travel Directors Council, which the only members were the tourism directors from the South. We started off with 7 states, and we ended up with 11 states. And then after, in the early 70s, they brought the private sector with them to promote the South. And then over the years, it got to a point where they wanted to do their own thing and leave the private sector out. So in 1983, we organized the Southeast STS, and we started off with people like the editor of Home, Southern Living, different CVBs. Ed Stone used to be at Callaway Gardens. He was with Opryland at the time, and he was one of our charter members. Then we had Delta Airlines and Eastern Airlines, and so we got together and formed that organization, and now we have over 800 members. But we started off the first year, we had a hoedown in Washington for the members of the Congress from the Senate and the House. And we invited so many staff members. I think it was 5 from the House and 7 from the Senate. Maybe it was reversed, can't remember. But this was the biggest project I think we ever had. We had started off with a small tent, and we'd invite them all there. And let me tell you, Zell used to come up to the hoedowns. Tom Murphy, all of them, and we started bringing personalities in, like Hank Aaron and different people like that to be at the hoedowns. But the beauty of it, each state brought their own food and prepared it there, like oysters from Florida or catfish from Mississippi. Stone Mountain on the Larry Island had a convoy of cookers and things like that, and he did all the barbecue and the Brunswick stew and stuff. Well, this started off with a small group, and then the last time we had over 1,600 people there at the hoedown. We had a tent. We used to rent tents from Maryland. Then Chattanooga Tent Company had a better price, so we'd rent the tents from Chattanooga Tent Company to go to the hoedowns. And we got to meet everybody. Bill Nelson, the senator from Florida, his office would RSVP for all the members of the House. I'm trying to think of other people who might have assisted that. But in the case of everybody wanted to come. I mean, we got people that we even had to build up a fence over the years to keep them out of the staff. Because if one staff member got there, we got some great pictures of that, of all the people who were there. Senator Strong Thurman never missed a hoedown. We had a senator from Mississippi. They had a quartet that used to sing and perform for us. We've had stars from Opryland to perform. We had stages. Ronnie Cole, one of the great pianists from New Orleans, he was on yesterday morning on CBS. He performed at just about all of our hoedowns that we had. But we got to know all the senators at that time.
Is there any help from the federal government?
No, none.
Tourist.
We worked very closely with the U.S. Department of Commerce. Now, some of the projects we did, we started going overseas with Southeast Tourism, and go to these. We'd have, back with the STDC, excuse me. The U.S. Department of Commerce assisted us in setting up our receptions for the travel agents, tour operators, people like that. For years, we went to Rome and London and Paris and Berlin and Copenhagen and London and had receptions for the travel agents and tour operators. And Delta Airlines worked hand in glove with us. They were fantastic every trip we made. But we'd use the U.S. Department of Commerce would have in certain cities, we'd use their offices. We didn't go to the hotels. Or the ambassadors, we'd have receptions there. It was cheaper, and we got great service. But we did that for many years, going over and working for ourselves. In Canada, Georgia, we started off in Canada with the Canadian Express. And back in the 60s, we never missed a show at Canadian National Exhibition when we was trying to sell the coast, Jekyll Island. And we'd take our group, from mainly the Welcome Center managers or personnel, would work those shows in Canada for us. And we always stayed at the same hotel. And the Canadians, they always had stars. I never forget, Robert Goulet got married while we were there, and he was in a room right above it on the next floor. Bob Hope would be a performer there. He always stayed at the same hotel. But we'd always take our Welcome Center ladies down to Niagara Falls after the show was, before the show opens, so they could see Niagara Falls when we were there.
Do we still do that, Bill?
No, we Southeast Tourism did it for a number of years, called the Canadian Express, but kind of we do it in other things in Southeast Tourism. We have a marketing college at Dahlonega, at now the University of North Georgia, and this has been one of the most successful projects. We bring, it's been going on since '91, and each year we do it while the college is closed for the summer. And this has been probably one of the most successful projects we've ever had. We bring in knowledgeable speakers who do not charge us one nickel for their service. And they're brilliant for us tourism teachers, all of them in the private sector. And it's just been fantastic what they've been able to do.
Do we do the Hoedowns now?
No, we don't do it. That was just, it kind of played out.
You mentioned international marketing. Has that been successful?
Well, it wasn't done till we started it. And I'm going to give Delta Airlines a lot of credit for that, too. They worked with us, a guy named John Lovegrove in London. He worked with us and helped set up a lot of this for us. And but there's not as much marketing because, again, going back to the internet, there's more marketing for that now, as far as taking groups over for the travel agents and tour operators and people like that. Mm-hmm. Let me say to Delta Airlines, and Eastern Airlines, both those airlines during the 60s when I was with the tourist division, they helped us more than, I can't tell you the help they gave us. When we have the floats in the Tournament of Roses parade, they would meet us at the gate, and we always again had Miss Georgia's, Miss C. Georgia First. They would ride on those floats, and one year we won. And this morning when I was trying to get it, the year we won the top prize at the Tournament of Roses, and we were the only state, other than the western states on the coast out there, that ever had a float in the Tournament of Roses. And Governor Maddox gave us that money every year. Frank Coggin was a senator from Hapeville, and the Hapeville High School band they had, I guess, was selected to be in the Rose Bowl parade. So we went to Governor Maddox's first year he was in there to get money from him to have a Georgia float in the Tournament of Roses. And he gave us some money to do it. And then every year he was there, we got money from him to do it every year after that. That was exciting. I mean, that was just to sit on that. We'd go where they were building the parade. Everything was roses or seeds or something like that. And the first year, we had a rendering of a Gone with the Wind scene. And, of course, everything had to be done. And I've got, for your museum, I've got those renderings of our first float we had at Tournament of Roses. And it was just exciting to see Georgia receive, but we won an award every year, including sweepstakes, that we were there. But to come back home and the president of Tournament of Roses would come in to Atlanta to present the award to the governor, that was exciting. And it was so exciting to see the millions who watched that parade, and then they'd take them in an area in Pasadena there, and other hundreds of thousands go by to see the floats. Mm-hmm. And but it made you feel so good to come back home and you see all the articles. It was in every Georgia newspaper about Georgia winning something like that. And that was the beginning of us really promoting Georgia and making feel people comfortable about Georgia compared to the old days.
Did all states do that?
No. As far as I know, we were the only state east of the Mississippi that ever did that. Now, some of the states from the West Coast, they would have a float. And the first year's float cost us $19,000. Now, anywhere from $150 to close to about $500,000 they pay for those floats out there. But we had a company out there, here in Preston, that did our rendering, and they built that float. And the fun was, the first day we got there, we'd go to where they were building the float and being able to see them put that float together. And it was wonderful to be a Georgian, I'll tell you.
I've often been curious about that, whether you built the floats in Georgia and moved them there.
Every one of them, every single one of them are built out there.
So is there
They
somebody
got float
there
builders. They got, I think it's right now, 6 float builders that build those floats. I'm sure with the way if you saw the last one, it's just amazing the way they put those things together.
Is there somebody there to oversee?
Oh yeah, they're like here in person, the 2 people we trade with. And not only that, they put us in touch with the people who did the dresses for us. And we got, for your museum, we got one that made out in front of the Tillman Brothers headquarters there, that where we had the Miss Georgias there, 3 of them, and it was just beautiful to see those dresses and how well they were. You didn't have to worry about the weather either, like we did for the inaugural floats.
Bill, when you think about Georgia tourism, since you first established the division within the Department of Commerce in the state capitol, how has it changed?
Well, you have to think about how good is the legislature to provide funds to promote Georgia. And I'd like to see the legislature do more than they're doing. We're letting other states get so far ahead of us. We've got states like South Carolina that's putting millions of dollars every year to promote tourism. We've got states like Missouri and Tennessee and Texas and Louisiana that's just doing 10, I'm not going to say how many more times, but they just, you need to see Georgia represented on TV screens and other places. And we got to start working on our legislature to provide those funds so Georgia can compete today with other states. And that's something all of us should be concerned about.
Well, Bill, I'd like to ask you, if you will, to sum up, in your opinion, the history of Georgia tourism over the past 50 years.
Fantastic. 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 We've got great roads for tourists to ride on. We've got welcome centers almost at every single border where the tourists come in. We've got great attractions in Georgia. We've got great events in Georgia that attract millions of people to come into the state to see what we've got to offer. And I think it's just remarkable what, and again, it's something you have to do like Six Flags and other Disney, that you got to create something every year, something new. You can't just sit on your laurels. You've got to have something new, a new attraction, a new something. And like downtown Atlanta, look at what they've added, the aquarium, Coca-Cola, and different ones. After I left the state, I did the marketing for Underground Atlanta for about 3 years, and that was exciting. We started the Peach Drop back in 1971.
At Richie's.
Well, it was underground. We had the underground.
Oh, underground.
It wasn't that tall, but we started it.
Yeah.
And but we just got to create more and more things for people to get interested in far as traveling to Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And but let me tell you, the people in Georgia are just great salespeople. The love that people have for Georgia. Look at how many people are moving in from up north to Georgia and the southern states. It's amazing, and I'm just proud of what's going on in Georgia for its tourism. Well, I want to say that with the birth of tourism in Georgia, it was because everybody worked together to make Georgia a destination rather than a pass-through state. So I think that's what's happened. We now are a destination in place of a pass-through state.
Very well put. Any opportunities you can see down the road?
Well, I just see with the hospitality that Georgia people offer, tourism is going to have a bright, bright future, and hospitality is what it's all about. That's just at Dahlonega where we have the school. We teach hospitality, but this is what it's all about. You go into some of these hotels or restaurants and you don't get a friendly greeting. You don't have a friendly feel about it. So Georgia, I think, I hope everybody have Georgia on their mind.
You know, that was shared by Dr. Hugh Masters. Did you ever know Dr.
I knew
Masters?
Hugh Masters well. He's great guy.
He believed in hospitality and services very much, and in fact had some courses at the Continuing Education Center here at the University of Georgia. Any main challenges do you see in the future?
I don't have a challenge, but I wished I was about 50 again to see what the future's going. Can you believe when I was growing up, I put my mother's bathroom in. I was in the Merchant Marine when I was 20 years old. I picked cotton. I hoed cotton. We didn't have all the things that people have in life. And see what's happened. I never will forget my mother saying when she saw the first automobile, scared her to death. And it's just what's happening in America, and nothing can hold us back with the greatness of what it happens almost every day with something new as far as excitement for America.
Bill, of all the projects you initiated in the tourism area in Georgia, of which are you most proud?
Well, I'd have to say the welcome centers, because we were the third state in the nation to have welcome centers. And we have welcomed millions and millions and billions of tourists over the past 50 years.
Good. Well, you've certainly been a great asset to our state. We appreciate everything you've done for us, and we appreciate you spending this time with us.
Thank you, Bob.
Describe for us, Bill, if you will, Georgia's tourist industry during racial segregation. As a tourism director, were there any specific questions, challenges, or issues regarding segregated travel in Georgia during that period?
Well, I'll have to say this, that one thing that happened, it happened to our Georgia Welcome Centers. We had different restrooms, which I give the Governor Vanderbilt credit for doing away with that. It was something that was just custom, I guess. And it's a lot of things happened back then that doesn't happen today. That's what makes us proud. You know, they keep reminding us of what happened back then. Today's generation is entirely different from the generations of the past. But what makes me so excited about the tourism industry, we employ so many thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands. It doesn't matter what kind of race you are. And what we try to do is upgrade everything that we're doing to benefit everybody.
I think you touched on this, but a little bit more about the like just specifically talking about the kinds of tourists you were marketing towards when you first started versus the kind of tourists you were how that group changed?
You know, the difference on that is the way we marketed back those 12 years compared to the way they market today is much difference is day and night. It's amazing. We try to get as much print media, broadcast media. I want to say one thing that I didn't say. That's mentioned about the GAB and the Georgia Press giving us millions of dollars worth of publicity just to get Georgians to travel within Georgia. And the GAB would send us invoices every month, and they'd get it from all the TV stations, radio stations in Georgia, how much free publicity they gave. And some months it'd be over $2 million worth. And that's what we had to do back then, is to get that free promotion, and publicity. And so it's just it's different, just a different marketing technique. And I'm gonna tell you, I'm the dumbest one in the world when it comes to marketing, web marketing. I just don't know anything about it. We just did it a different way. Ours was hospitality, greeting, making people feel good about Georgia, teaching about our attractions and our events, and it's. I can't say enough about what people did to work with us. I don't think things like the Georgia Motor Trucker Association. When we take those peaches to places, we hauled our exhibits, truckload, trailer truckload of exhibits. Georgia Motor Trucker Association gave us those trucks and trailers to use. We got the Georgia State Patrol to drive them to the different places and where the shows were held, or the peaches where we'd go. So I guess our sense of promotion is completely different. We were building goodwill for Georgia. That was really one of the main things we thought we had to do first to get people to think about Georgia and think good about Georgia.
When do you feel like the outside perception of Georgia, when do you feel like that started to change where maybe more black families would be interested in visiting Georgia? Because they probably wouldn't have wanted to come in the earlier days.
Well, I can tell you how that's happened. Look at all the black families moving from north back to Georgia. Just think about that. So that perception is, I'd rather live in Georgia than anywhere, and it's mainly it's the roots, mainly it's the job opportunities there in Georgia. I think the change was when I say we, I mean everybody involved. It's created such a good feeling for Georgia. I think that had more to do with it than anything in the world. I know Sam Nunn, and that's we used his office. I forgot that for RSVP and for all the Senate people. But Sam Nunn was so proud of what we were doing in Georgia. He gave us compliment after compliment, and it's just it was a gradual thing. I think it takes, and I don't think you'll ever change the minds of some of them. They've never been out of New York. They've never, they don't know they don't even know about us. And when they come down, look how many have moved to the South that will never leave. I bet there's not 1%, I'm guessing, they'll ever leave the South. So it's a different, I guess, a different way of living they enjoy.